Hey guys.
Hi.
Hi. So I guess we've heard a lot about influencer marketing today, and each one of you have kind of different thoughts. Something that I'm interested in is return on investment. I know, just a fun question to start with. Social Bakers did a poll yesterday about issues with social media, and the biggest one was proving the effectiveness. Tina, I know that you have some thoughts on this.
Yeah.
But do you ever see influencer marketing overtaking traditional channels in effectiveness?
I think it certainly has its place in some industries and with some products. So with the likes of beauty and fashion, where you can easily have, you can give a code, for instance, and see the actual results. So, Wendy might post something with a unique code where you can go and place that code in and boom, you can see the immediate sales results right there. However, there are different kinds of, like let's say you're a bank or something, you're not going to be able to measure, well, you could measure account sign-ups or something like that, but if you're just going for brand awareness, it's very, very difficult to put a figure on the return, monetary return.
And then
for e-com, it's a lot easier.
And then are you seeing kind of the metrics that marketers demand evolve from just reach and engagement and moving to really, sales uplift?
Yes, but only savvy marketers. A lot, like at the moment, the briefs that we get in at NZME for across our brands are still really rudimentary. People aren't asking deep enough questions, and I really encourage you, if you're going to do this, then ask the hard questions. Ask for click-through rates, ask for cost per click, ask per cost per acquisition, ask for all those things. It's possible to get those measurements, so make sure that you do ask for them.
You know what that you said that I really, really like? I like that you have, in the agreement, you ask them whether they ever committed fraud.
Yes.
Yes, so then those people with the fake followers, maybe they'll be like, I better not sign this.
Exactly.
Yeah,
we make sure to ask up front, have you ever bought followers or engaged in fraudulent activity?
But I guess you can't really prove it, even if they kind of did buy
Yeah, they
followers.
can completely lie. They can lie and say that we haven't, but at least we've covered our ass essentially, and we've asked and we've done our due diligence.
Yeah, I think everyone should do that from now on.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Make sure you ask. Get them to sign it.
Philip, what do you think? What kind of measurements are you being asked for through the platform that you've kind of done?
Sure. I mean, asking some great questions here. Transparency, I believe, is key to our business. So coming back to what Tina was talking about in an example just with the influencer in New Zealand and Volvo, I think that's a great example of where being absolutely honest and transparent about any association doesn't necessarily mean it's going to detract from the content value. In fact, I think followers are going to be much more receptive to someone who's honest. And Wendy, you've got a lot of experience with this, and you believe very much in being absolutely upfront about your relationships. So I believe we're moving forward. I think there's some way to go to ensuring that transparency. I know there isn't necessarily legislation in place that enforces it and penalizes if someone is stepping beyond the line. But I believe that we're moving towards some self-regulation, and I believe there's a maturity that should see more transparency in future between influencers and brands, which I think is good for the business, because there's a lot of honesty here, and it's actually it's a good thing, because to ask these questions means that we should then hopefully start to address some concerns. I totally relate to and understand some caution and concern that a brand marketer who's not worked in this space would have before choosing to spend money in this space. So return on investment, it's key that it's absolutely clear who's saying what, and they're saying it because they believe in that product. Now, it does depend, I think, on the product and the service and the category. I think some spaces are easier to work in. I'd say travel, going to an amazing location, an amazing backdrop, and talking about the space where they are is probably simpler, Wendy, I think, than perhaps talking about here's another make of tea or lipstick,
hemorrhoid cream.
What's that?
Hemorrhoid cream.
Yeah, hemorrhoid cream.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can imagine that being a tough one to sell.
Yeah. So
Preparation H. Love it.
there's definitely difficult products to work, or categories I think are more challenging. And then in terms of the actual measurements that go with that, absolutely engagement, conversations that the influencer is having with their particular following. That's what we look at very closely.
So in Australia, we actually have legislation that says influencers have to declare posts with hashtag ad or hashtag sponsored. Would you guys like to see that rolled out across the whole APAC region?
Yes, please.
Yes, I absolutely think that it should be the case. And there's been lots of argument and conversation in New Zealand about that. But at the moment, there has been no legislation. There are just guidelines.
Yeah,
but we are, industry leaders. We are leading the way, and we're always making sure that we do. Just to make sure that,
I think it's getting worse, though. In Singapore, it's definitely getting worse.
It's terrible.
It's terrible
so many
because
people.
it becomes a point where if everyone's doing it, I'm gonna join them. There's no harm in the safety in numbers, right? So the smaller influencers, they just really don't tag at all.
Yeah, that's true. I think often with those micro influencers, they don't actually know. And I think there might be some fear around if I do put the paid partnership tag and then the reach is going to be lower and they don't want to be seen as not being authentic. So I think there's a bit of fear, but also a bit of laziness.
But I mean, it's good. I mean, clients should also learn that, like brands should also learn that it's actually better for them to actually have the tag.
As a brand, you should request that they do that. It's up to you, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it does get a little bit more complicated and more challenging when you're working with vast numbers of micro-influencers. But this, I think, again, key to all of this is working with influencers that brands also trust. It works both ways, and I think there are ways to identify influencers who are the right fit. It does get more complex, though, when you're looking at scale of 50, 100, 200 influencers, micro-influencers. It's probably harder to track some of that in terms of credibility and reliability and trust and authenticity. But I think that I see what you're saying, Wendy, in terms of, say, Singapore as a small market where the rather limited pool of influencers who you see again and again on multiple products and multiple brands can make for some challenges. The more influencers that there are, I would say, means for more opportunities. There are challenges in Singapore, there's no doubt about it. But micro-influencer space, I think, opens up opportunity, but there's also the risk. And that's something I think as a business, as an industry, we still have work to do to make sure that we keep that credibility and ensure that there is absolutely reliability with what someone is saying and what they're posting.
That risk is huge, and I already referenced Logan Paul before, and there's the PewDiePie issues. I know you mentioned this, Tina, but do you then put in contracts for what they do outside, the deal with you? It's a really tricky situation because, as you said, influencers go rogue, and it's
that's
really
why
bad.
we have the indemnity contracts that protect NZME brands and also our client brands, and there are punitive clauses in those contracts. So it does make sure that the influencer is aware that if they do misbehave or if they bring the brand into disrepute, then they are liable for any damages that may occur as a result.
I think that actually brands shouldn't be so worried about this issue because at the end of the day, if an influencer does something really shameful, like for example, if you're advertising with me right now and tomorrow I am killing kittens, right? So it's like, okay, then what the brand would do is say, oh, it's our mistake to advertise with her, we don't associate with killing kittens. And not only do you get clean of that and then the whole killing kittens issue, but you also get a lot of publicity for that. Because then all the news cycles will be like, oh, Wendy got dropped by X brand, for what she did. So, and then you get free publicity. So I don't think it's really bad news for the brand itself. It's almost like a different kind of marketing.
Yeah.
I'd also say that this is where it's important to look at it as a longer-term relationship, and the use of influencers. Content strategy should be, I believe, and the best results are when a brand is looking at working with a certain number of influencers, perhaps the same number of influencers and type of influencers throughout a whole year, a content calendar approach, where there's clearly a relationship that's established. It builds up trust and reliability between brand and influencer. It creates much, much more meaningful content, and then, of course, has much stronger results in targeting and reaching the audience that the brand wants to talk to. I think where the problems are occurring is that where marketers are, if you like, taking a rather short-term kind of view on this, where they're using an influencer in January, then they're not using them again till July. It's very transactional. I think when working with an influencer should be that there's definitely a mutual beneficial relationship. And some brands get it really, really well, I think. They build it up in terms of they're helping the influencer to build their business. They have gatherings, they have events, they have capability building programs, as we call them, are helping an influencer to understand how to produce better content. It might be production-based, it might be just in terms of understanding the business of influence better, certainly at a sort of lower rising star level. I think brands should look to identify influencers from a longer-term perspective and work with them and help grow their business so that it's actually a win-win situation.
I think long-term versus short-term is really interesting for all mediums, traditional as well. Would you say that to get the long-term benefits of using influencers that maybe you should appoint ambassadors? So in Australia, brands like David Jones, which is one of our biggest retailers, will appoint Miranda Kerr, and she'll do that role for 3 years. Do you think that's better than just one ad campaign?
Yeah, I think, yes, I do. I mean, it's interesting, the word ambassador, because ambassador generally has been used when we're talking about more traditional TV stars, film stars, and they can be a very effective way of reaching audience too. It's not that saying one way is better than another. I think influencer campaigns can work very effectively alongside more traditional campaigns too. But I think ambassadors, and this, or certainly, what some brands call beauty squads, or clubs where there's maybe 10, 20, 30. But if it gets too large, then you might lose that sense of kind of cohesion. But I'm certainly seeing some great results and some great examples around the world where brands are working with the same influencers again and again throughout the year. I mean, sorry to come back to it, but an always-on content calendar approach here can certainly make sure that you're not going to make those kind of mistakes and run into some of those issues that Wendy's talked about when it's just a singular one-off campaign. You've got to look at it as part of a much stronger cohesive content strategy throughout the year, not just a one-off in one time of the year and then don't do it again for 6 months.
Wendy, are there any brands that you work with on a long-term ambassadorship basis?
Yes, some of them. Right now, I'm the ambassador of this Japanese hair removal brand called Datsumo Labo. So I've worked with them for, I think, maybe 4 years. Yeah, for a pretty long time. And I think it's been pretty good. And I'm going to continue signing another year of ambassadorship for them. Yeah.
Great. And in terms of the engagement you get from branded posts, as we said before, people are scared to disclose when things are sponsored because they're scared of seeing the engagement drop. Is that something that you see, engagement drop on branded posts, or does it get the same traction as your posts of your kid?
No, I think that it doesn't really drop. So what's really important for different platforms are different. So I would say that for YouTube, sorry to say this, Yarn, but content is king. So like as long as you have interesting content, it's like even if it's an ad and it's still interesting, it's fine. But like for Instagram, then what is important is that you have a picture that is just very Instagrammable, and they are like, after using Instagram for a while, you kind of know what they like. Like people like couple shots and everything. So, or like really beautiful DSLR kind of like bouquet, everything, they love that kind of stuff. So like, for example, I recently did an ad campaign for Daniel Wellington, and I took a picture with my husband, and he doesn't like taking pictures, so usually my feed doesn't have him. But I was like, I'm getting paid for this, you better take a picture with me. So, and plus he got a free watch, so he was like, oh, nice. fine. So we took the picture, and that actually got a lot of likes, like more than my usual, even though it's very clearly an ad, because we were like, watch. So, like people really like that picture. So I don't think it's really got to do with the ad. But at the same time, if you try to like mask an ad not to be an ad, it's kind of really turned off. Like, it really turns people off. Like personally for myself, if I sometimes I just like an influencer's post because I just see the pictures. And then after that, I read the caption like carefully. I'm just like, oh my God, it's an ad. I feel so cheated, like wasted my like. I'll take back my like after that. Yeah.
The example that you gave, Tina, was really interesting of what brand was it? The insurance brand?
Oh, you talking about the retirement village?
Yes.
Yes.
Close, insurance retirement.
So close.
How do you think that content kind of achieved cut through? Because something that we spoke about was, influence marketing is great for women and travel and makeup and all of that, but other categories like banking and insurance and retirement villages don't lend themselves as easily to social media.
No, that's true. And when we were first in, creative briefing about this, I was like, how on earth are we going to get influencer marketing in with a retirement village? This is crazy. But we chose just the perfect guy for it. He's so relatable, funny. He's the kind of guy that the older community will recognize from his time on TV because he presents the weather and he's very affable. And just him talking to people in their homes, and he got cut through because he just has that personality. He was just the right fit, and we were just able to use his channels through our channels. Honestly, I think it was just the right personality fit. That was the key, really.
Phil, have you had any challenging clients that have you've had to think outside the box and get the local weatherman in?
Yeah, clients can be very challenging because it's all about results. I mean, we do work on projects where it's about brand awareness, but more and more it's about how can you impact sales. And that's always going to be challenging. And I'd say with that, of course, is how can you come up with brilliant creative. And I think that's a really important part of this business as well, is where, with all the metrics and data that there is, it should come back to what is being posted and how smart it is, how creative, and how clearly aligned it is with the brand. So it's a natural fit. Everything is in alignment. And I think when the brands get it right and working with the right influencers, it's because the content, the storytelling is just kind of natural. And there's no kind of, some of the best branded content doesn't feel like it. It's just natural storytelling and entertainment. I'm not saying it's straightforward or easy with all brands and all brand objectives. And I think, like Tina's was talking about with insurance, the retirement home, that's not a straightforward kind of brand brief. It isn't. I mean, we work some amazing brand briefs where it's wellness, it's fitness, it's travel, it's beauty, lifestyle. So yes, we do get some of those more challenging ones. I think there's a way to come up. There's always a concept, a smart idea. I don't always think there's a smart solution, but you just have to look at it perhaps from a different perspective. And Singapore particularly, I find, is one of the challenging markets because of the limited pool and because of a certain cynicism, a certain kind of lack of respect for it, because there's been so many examples of where it's been a mismatch that you do have to come up with something smarter and more innovative, and absolutely something you can trust, of course. And that's not easy, absolutely not easy.
We're obviously all pro-influencer marketing here, but we want to open up the floor for some of the cynicists and for some people to kind of challenge our lovely speakers. So if you have any questions, now's the time, and then you can have a drink, but, a few more questions. Is there anyone out there? I can't actually see. This person?
Hi, my question is for Tina. I'm a Kiwi as well, and I know that in New Zealand, newsreaders and journalists probably have a lot more influence than they perhaps do in other markets where there's more of a celebrity culture.
Yes.
How do you manage editorial independence and protecting your journalists when there's things like endorsements and brand ambassadorships and those types of things are happening? I know NZME has some pretty big names like Mike Hosking and those types of guys who are cross-platform. How do you manage that on the commercial side, thinking about the journalistic side?
It's incredibly tricky, and there are heated discussions, rock-solid contracts. When we bring the talent on board, we are very open about discussing what they can and can't do in terms of when they are not acting in a capacity for NZME. So when Mike Hosking is off air, he still is representing News Talk ZB, for instance. He's still related to us, and so therefore any approach that he has from, I believe he's got an ambassadorship for Jaguar, and that's a perfect fit, and that's totally fine by us. But every time he's approached, he has to come to us and say, this has been put on the table, do you have a problem with it? Then we actually ask if we can go to Jaguar ourselves and say, can we tie that in as a commercial package with our brands as well? Give us the opportunity to do that, and even if they say no, that's fine. At least we've had the opportunity. But with regards to keeping editorial integrity, we always make sure that we're very clear that it's on their social media, it states opinion, like all opinions are my own. And that's just one simple little thing that you can do to keep a journalist quite separate from endorsing a product and journalistic integrity. But yeah, the conversations are very open and regular, and it's a pretty grey area, to be honest. It's everybody's different, but it's always a conversation. It's ongoing. Good question.
Any other questions out there?
Thank you. Hello, how are you doing? Oh, that's loud. Okay. Interesting subject, because Social Bakers has invited me to be here as an influencer, and I'm also a social media agency owner. I know how you can sort of cheat the system to be an influencer. You can go to Fiverr, you can pay $5 and get 1,000 followers. It's easy to do. But how I find out if people are using fake followers is I use social media tools like IG Analyzer or Social Blade. Do you require any of that type of data to see like what type of conversions they have, what their engagement is, who their audience is located? Because for me, for example, for this conference, I had to provide specific analytics. Is that something that's important to you? And then also, how do you track conversions from people like us to see if it's actually reaching your potential audience?
Can I just jump in there? Absolutely. In terms of transparency and obviously reliability on who they say they are and who they really are is key to all our business. So we put a huge amount of investment in analytical tools, both in terms of tools that we have proprietary and also ones third party. It's absolutely vital to our business that we help creators grow their business too. So we look at it as very much a two-way process. So that's why we have a proprietary platform, which is called Society. And we've got close to 100,000 now influencers from around the world, with a big intent to raise that number much more significantly in Asia Pacific. And it's designed to be an opportunity for us to engage with influencers, offer opportunities, but also enhance and help them in terms of how they look at their data, how they can measure their performance and their success. And it's very much two-way. In terms of the influencer fraud, I mean, absolutely, it's something that we need to keep working at. I think certain categories are more prone to this than others. Perhaps some territories are more prone to it. But it's, I really do believe that it will get better. I think we're at the stage where we're now talking about it much more openly, and because of that, that's a positive. I can only see that there will be much more enforcement and protection in the future, because this business needs it. The parties that are involved in this, the leaders of this business, need to make sure that it is absolutely credible. And so I believe that we will come up with solutions for that.
Great. Do we have any more questions before closing remarks? Maybe time for one more. I think someone over there. Last question.
Okay, thank you. My name is Eko. I'm from IT, from Jakarta. It is interesting to know that the influencer marketing is becoming high popular, and people are toward to the influencer marketing. But I see there is a loss of creativity in the influencer of marketing. So I don't know how you maintain your creativity as a marketer to not to utilize the influencer, but it's to how you create the value to the consumer or to the customer. Yeah, that's my question.
Sorry, who is your question addressed to?
To all of you. I mean, if you can answer.
Were you saying that there was a lack of creativity in influencer marketing?
Not a lack, but I would say it's a shifting from the previous, it's traditional marketing, I would say. I mean, initially we want to have when we market the product, then we want to create more value to the customers or to the consumer. But today, this is I feel, but I don't know whether it's correct or not. But people like to instead of utilize the influencer to the customer.
Okay, Philip.
Have you worked with influencers, sir? Is this an area that your company, your brand is active in?
I know some, but not really.
And the question, if I hear it rightly, is in terms of how the consumer experience of using the influencers.
Yes. I mean, how you maintain your creativity as marketer to add the value to the customer or to the consumer.
It's an excellent question. I mean, and you know, it comes back to the quality of the content and the natural fit of the influencer and the objectives of the brand and the audience that you're trying to reach. You know, I think we've heard of a number of instances, examples around the region and elsewhere where brands have not got this right and where consumers have resisted or have, you know, there's been a counter, you know, reaction, a negative reaction. I think it comes back to making sure that, you know, you're doing it for the right reasons, that you do your research, that you're working with the right influencer, that you're coming up with the right ideas, whatever that they're posting is relevant for the brand. Because yes, if you get it wrong, then consumers are very vocal. Consumers, certainly within the social world, are likely to create, you know, a lot of chatter. That's not consistent with what the objective is for a brand. So, yeah, I'd say it's imperative that you get it right, that the consumers see value and that they don't see what we've talked about, which is a false fit. That you know, why am I hearing this from an influencer talking about a product or a brand that I might like, but I don't see why they're talking about it, or they're not talking about it with any conviction or any sense of it being real or credible. It's just another paid piece of messaging. So it's really important to get it right.
Great. We will pass over for the closing remarks now. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.